around and says, guys, we did some simulations, and actually it's like we can get another 5,000 kilograms into space if we just land it horizontal. If we kind of give up on our ego and land horizontally, at least on Earth, then, I think they could be doing that pretty quickly. Because that's the thing is, its ultimate thing has been to land on Mars and, other planets, and Mars doesn't have a runway, doesn't have a, thick enough atmosphere to utilize aerodynamic flight like that, so you have to do propulsive landing for Mars. You're going to land on an unprepared surface, so it has to be able to do this at some point. The ultimate, it sounds ridiculous, and it is, but the ultimate goal of it is to land on Mars.
There's not much of an atmosphere to help you with for the belly flop to be useful.
There's only 1% the atmosphere on Mars as there is on Earth, but you still want to utilize as much of that atmosphere as possible. So in the upper atmosphere, it's still going to be coming in more or less kind of perpendicular to the airstream. I guess it's probably more like 60 degrees, 70 degrees to the airstream, like where it's belly flopping. And it's going to especially do that on Mars. It's going to need to, use up let the little bit of atmosphere there is, you're coming in at insane velocities. And so even that 1% thin atmosphere is still going to do a lot of work. Now, on Mars, there's only 38% of Earth's gravity on Mars. So the belly flop maneuver is it could be a lot more conservative. You could do that at like 5,000 feet up, and it just wouldn't matter as much because there's not as much gravity drag. So you can kind of just more slowly, gently, you don't have to do this crazy, extravagant, like belly flop, flip maneuver. But it would still, something at some point, you would transition from more or less perpendicular to the airstream to, horizontal to landing vertically.
I like how we're having this old, boring conversation about the differences of landing on Earth versus on Mars. This is surreal that this is actually a real conversation. That this is something that we're discussing. Because it has to do both.
Yeah. But in my opinion,
yes,
I think we'll pretty quickly see an evolution of Starship that's like dedicated versions for certain tasks. And at the end of the day, again, if someone runs a simulation and says it's actually more efficient and it's better just to land horizontally on a runway, then that's what's going to happen. It doesn't matter, but they still will develop. If the ultimate goal is to land on Mars, then they'll have a dedicated Mars variant. Which will likely look different than the Earth variant, and they'll still probably be launched on the same booster. You know what I mean? So there's.
Oh, you mean like that particular vehicle will not be returning back to Earth? It'll need to be modified. Because the ultimate is to have one Starship that goes to Mars, lands on Mars, and takes off of Mars, lands back on Earth, and is reused again, over and over and over.
And there's a chance that you have just a cycler, just if you at the end of the day you're just really trying to see what is most feasible, what's the most efficient, you literally have a vehicle dedicated to Mars. Mars is easy to do a single stage orbit. It's a lot lower gravity, a lot thinner atmosphere. You can easily do a single stage orbit. You get into orbit, you park to a dedicated transfer vehicle that goes between Earth and Mars. It only stays in space. You don't have heat shields, you don't have landing legs, you don't have all these things that you need. And ideally it's nuclear powered, so it's super efficient. That gets you back to Earth. Once you're at Earth, you rendezvous again with another landing Starship. And that Starship might be a horizontal runway Starship, there's I don't see and I think ultimately it'll win out where we don't have a one place fits all. I think that's the flaw of the space shuttle, really, is that it was trying to do everything and ended up kind of doing nothing well. But I think what SpaceX is proven. I mean, SpaceX already has variants coming. There's already going to be a dedicated lunar lander for NASA or the Artemis program. There's already going to be a tanker variant. There's already going to be likely just a pure cargo version. There's likely going to be a human version. We'll likely see evolutions of this thing happen, relatively quickly.
And once it's all working, it's only a matter of weeks before people riding on it will be complaining about the speed of the Wi-Fi. That's the old Louis C.K. joke of where you're flying on a chair through the air.
Yes.
It's incredible.
You didn't even know this existed, and now you're complaining about it.
That's great. Exactly. So you tweeted fun fact about Starship by doing the flip around 500 meters versus higher up, like 2,000 meters. The difference in delta V is 500 meters per second. That's a 20-ton fuel saving, which means basically 20 tons more you can put into orbit. That's more than Falcon 9 has ever launched. just by flipping later. That's really interesting. So that was a decision to flip closer to the ground.
Yeah. The closer to the ground, the better. The more the atmosphere is doing work, and we get into that video. Really dives into like gravity losses, gravity drag. The more time you're spent, every second that your rocket engine is running, Earth is stealing 9.8 meters per second of acceleration. There's just inherently 9.8 meters per second squared of acceleration. So every second that engine is running, the first big majority of your thrust is actually being just stolen by Earth's gravity. So the longer you're fighting that, the more inefficient it is. So the best thing would be you flip at 100 meters off the ground. You light all your engines to maximum thrust. You pull 50 Gs. You land on a dime basically. Obviously, there's no margin there. And there's diminishing returns on that gravity loss thing and your high thrust weight ratios. So that's a pretty good compromise. Like, yes, it looks scary, but they could be a lot more aggressive with that yet and squeeze out even a little bit better performance, but there are diminishing returns. So that's kind of the magic number we've seen so far today, but we'll likely see that.
Oh shit!
You've attended some of these. What does it feel like
Did
to
I
see
tear
Starship in person? First of all, when it's just sitting there stacked, and second of all, when it's doing some of these tests, some of these maneuvers.
Well, first off, if you have the freedom of traveling and happen to live within a reasonable, either by plane or car, it's worth going down to South Texas. So Starbase is right on the border of Mexico and the United States, in the very southern tip of Texas, right along the Rio Grande, and it's insane because it's right along a public highway. You can anyone can drive down this, assuming it's not closed for testing. They do close the highways during the week a decent amount while they're doing tests. But sans any of those days, anyone can just drive down and see these things up close and personal with us. Like we're talking, from 100, 200 meters away. So 2 football fields away from the world's biggest, most powerful rocket. Imagine being able to do that during the Soviet Union, and, during the N1 and Saturn V. Imagine just being able to drive up right next to the launch pad. There's no way. And so to have this kind of access to this program is so incredible. The craziest thing is when you're driving out on Highway 4, it's bumpy, it's riddled with potholes because of all the insane amount of trucks having to go out there and traffic, and you're going through this. It's just this weird. You're like, where am I? You occasionally are seeing, you can kind of see you can see Mexico out your right window as you're driving down this highway. You're just sitting there. Where am I? And then all of a sudden you kind of turn this corner, and the trees and the brush kind of clear out, and all of a sudden you get a sense of everything on the horizon. At that point, you're pretty much 5 miles in the nose, or 8 kilometers away. And from there, you can see through the heat haze, through the atmospheric distortion,